Hello, biology students. This is your teacher, Mrs. Lewis, and we're currently on Chapter 6, Section 4, the building blocks of life. So this is your lesson 6.4. Make sure you write that in your book, please. So we've done a whole review as quick as I can about chemistry. But organic chemistry is where if you really aren't kind of a chemistry, math, physical science kind of person, you're more of a hands-on living tissue bio type of person, you probably really liked this part of chemistry when you were with Mrs. Steele or Mrs. Cavelli. So organic chemistry is the study of organic compounds or compounds that contain carbon. Carbon is a component of almost all biological molecules, and carbon atoms bond together to form a variety of important organic compounds. And what makes this particular section extremely important for you is when we start talking about what builds cell walls, mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. We start talking about different organelles like the ribosomes and protein and how's that manufactured and how do those things contribute to DNA and RNA. And then we're going to talk about genetics and multiplication and mitosis and meiosis. It's going to go on and on and on. It's all founded here. So you kind of needed to know the rules, sections 1 through 3, and then this is going to be kind of like the meat or the main topic that's going to lead to everything else. So macromolecules. Again, learn it now because it's not going away. They're large molecules, macro meaning big, okay? They're formed by joining smaller organic molecules together. Polymers are molecules made from repeating units of identical or nearly identical compounds called monomers. So right here, there's three things: macromolecules, polymers, monomers, especially this right here. This is a huge part of when we talk about DNA. So macromolecules are organized into 4 major categories. You definitely need to know those 4 categories: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So for the first major category of a macromolecule, let's talk about carbohydrates. There's 3 things you need to know about carbohydrates. The compounds compose of a ratio of 1 carbon to 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen. We call those carbohydrates. They have a general formula of CH2O, where N indicates the number of CH2O units in the chain. Carbohydrates are central energy source in organisms as well as functioning as cellular support in plants, fungi, and animals. Lipids are molecules made mostly of carbon and hydrogen that make up fats, oils, waxes. A lipid's primary function is to store energy, but they are also used to prevent water loss in plants and form the honeycomb in beehives. Proteins are compounds made of smaller carbon compounds called amino acids, and amino acids are made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and sometimes sulfur, and share the same general structure. When it comes to proteins, you need to know there are 20 different amino acids, and proteins are composed of various combinations of those amino acids. Proteins are responsible for structural support in cells, transporting substances within and between cells, signaling within and between cells, speeding up chemical reactions, and controlling cell growth. So as you can see, proteins and amino acids are extremely important when it comes to our cell, copying our cell, doing anything with DNA, transcribing it, writing it, translating it. It's all connected.
In order to understand peptide bonds, let's cover a few key concepts. Proteins are a primary building block of life. A protein is a compound made of small carbon compounds called amino acids. Several covalent bonds called peptide bonds join amino acids together to form proteins. A peptide bond forms between the amino acid group of one amino acid and the carboxyl group of another. In this example, the acid group of glycine joins with the amino group of alanine. The result is glycosalanine. The acid group of glycine loses an atom of hydrogen and an atom of oxygen. The amino group of alanine loses an atom of hydrogen. These atoms combine to form a water molecule. More peptide bonds can form in the same way, creating a chain of amino acids called a polypeptide. Polypeptides are essential to human life, but do you know where you can find them? Polypeptides are found as proteins like keratin in hair and nails, casein in milk, and hemoglobin in the blood. See how important they are?
I want to go back and track in your notes what the video said about how peptide bonds were formed, because that is all going to be part of the DNA section when we get there, and this will be a very nice reference for you. So I want to make sure that you do understand that nucleic acids are really, really important when it comes to DNA. Okay, so nucleic acids are complex macromolecules that transmit and store genetic information. Nucleic acids are composed of smaller repeating subunits composed of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and hydrogen called nucleotides. There are two types of nucleic acids in living organisms. The first one is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, ribonucleic acid. We'll talk more about those in upcoming chapters.
Hello, I'm Mr. Savage, and I'll be describing how monomers bond. In our first example, glucose, a monomer, has atoms removed, and the elements are joined to form compound, sucrose. Notice the di here, which means 2. Many glucose molecules can be joined through the same kind of reaction to form polymers. Glycogen is a large polymer where each blue structure here represents a different sugar. Glycogen, it's stored in muscle tissue and it's used for energy when we need it. Proteins work in a very similar way. Proteins make up 15% of your body mass. They're important for the transportation of molecules, structural support, cell growth, chemical reactions. All proteins are made of 20 amino acids. The order of these amino acids determine which protein that you have. We will also remove atoms through peptide bonding and form very long polymers with a very specific shape and a very specific function. In our last example, nucleotides, which make up deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, and RNA, ribonucleic acid, are joined by the sugar and phosphate of each monomer, forming long chains where their order will determine which protein you have.